In traditional Pokemon games, speed is a very important part of identifying a Pokemon's strengths and weaknesses. Speed dictates who goes first, which translates to who has control of that round of battle. And while there are some nuance to this, like priority moves or items that can change your speed tier, the omnipresent influence that speed has had on Pokemon's battling over the years does not apply to Pokemon Legends ZA. In this game's combat system, speed acts a little bit differently, and I've also heard many different things from different parts of the community. But today, I'm going to try to clear the air around all the misinformation and finally figure out, frame by frame, what speed actually does in Pokemon Legends ZA. And once we figure that out, we can analyze how important the speed stat is in this game's competitive ranked battles. If you enjoy content like this, hit that like button and subscribe for more Pokemon Legends ZA content. For those with access to the hype feature, press that hype button, it really helps out the channel. Thank you. First, let's validate the tooltip for what speed is described to do. It states, the higher a Pokemon's speed, the sooner it will be able to use moves. In other words, this stat shortens the cooldown time between moves. But how accurate is this statement? I've heard from some sources that it increases the Pokemon's movement speed. I've heard from some other sources that it shortens the casting time of a Pokemon's attack, which would be very substantial and game-changing for a lot of different Pokemon. Not only can you attack faster, but you can also avoid attacks a lot easier. But with that said, let's test it out in a controlled environment. We're going to be using two different Greninjas at the same level with a speed-neutral nature. One of them is going to be fully Eevee trained and the other one is going to be clean. For each of the Pokemon, we'll be using the exact same moveset in the exact same order. I'll be mashing the buttons to try to get the moves to come out as soon as possible, accounting for latency, but even then we're going to do an individual speed test to make sure to line up the move and count them frame by frame so that way we know if the casting time has changed or not. Real quickly though, to get everyone on the same page, every attack in Pokemon Legends ZA has a set startup time and also a cooldown time. If you look in the tooltip, for example, Ice Beam has an 8-second cooldown from when you use it, and it also takes a little bit of time for the Pokemon to cast Ice Beam. This casting time is also known as a startup animation. When the Ice Beam is finally cast, the beam is out and can hit other Pokemon. That is known as the active frames or the active animation. And finally, when you finish casting Ice Beam, the period of time between when the ice goes away and you're no longer able to damage anybody, and when you're able to cast another attack or move, that is known as the recovery animation. So we can split an attack into 3 different phases, and we're going to account for the timing of all of these phases to see if speed impacts anything at all. Using the very same Ice Beam as the example, we can see in the clip that the startup, the active and the recovery phases of the attack are all the same between 2 of the same Pokemon at the same level doing the same move, one with maxed out speed EVs and one without. To double check, let's compare a not ranged attack this time and use Night Slash, a physical short range attack that comes out pretty fast. And just like Ice Beam, we can see that both attacks have the exact same startup, active and recovery timing. Speed does not impact move speed at all. That seems to be more dependent on what the Pokemon species is or the model of the Pokemon itself. For a final test, let's go over a set of rotations. We're going to go from Ice Beam to Water Shuriken to Night Slash and then back to Ice Beam to see if there's any discrepancies in cooldowns and speed. In this clip, we see the second cast of Ice Beam takes a whole second longer if the Greninja has no speed EVs. With this, we debunked 2 rumors about speed. Speed has no impact on the casting animation of any attack, whether it's the startup, active, or recovery phases of the attack. And it also doesn't impact your Pokemon's move speed. The in-game tooltip is accurate, it does lower the cooldown, but by how much? We'll compare the Speed EV trained level 36 Greninja with 120 base speed to a 233 speed Greninja at level 70 with some speed EVs. For both of these Pokemon, we're going to be looking at how much cooldown reduction we get from the speeds that they're at. As shown, a move only goes on cooldown after the recovery animation has been played. As we can see, an attack only goes on cooldown after the recovery animation ends. Additionally, we can see that there is an impact based on the raw speed value and not so much the speed value that you have EV trained. with the level 70 Greninja's Ice Beam going off of cooldown after 3.06 seconds, while the level 36 Eevee trained Greninja recovers after 5.2 seconds. But what does all of this mean? Does this make speed good? Does it make it bad? Before I share with you my personal thoughts, what are your thoughts on all this? Does speed matter in Pokemon Legends ZA? Let us know in the comments below. As we can see from our previous example with the cooldown reduction based on our raw speed stat, this makes higher level fights where the speed value can be anywhere from 250 to 300 a lot more explosive, assuming that you use a move with a quicker animation. Ice Beam may not be the best use of a speedy Pokemon as it takes 2 whole seconds to cast. With something like the Elemental Punches or the Elemental Fangs, speed allows you to spam these attacks like no tomorrow. This could, in theory, with a high speed Eevee Pokemon, allow attacks like Fire Punch, for example, to outdamage something like Flare Blitz over a span of 2 seconds. But this is where it gets kinda tricky. If you're mainly playing for the single player and the story, training a Pokemon in speed and having more speed can actually be really good. A lot of the higher level Pokemon in this game will tend to use the more devastating and epic moves that have a bit of a cast time. In that casting window, maybe you can land 2 or 3 punches that might have killed them already, so you can definitely use speed to your advantage. On the other hand, if you're playing in competitive, even if you recover from your attack sooner, if your Pokemon dies in one hit, will it matter? Well, that kinda depends on the matchup and the loadout that you bring. A lot of long range moves with limited spread can be cast in a pretty efficient amount of time, which would in theory allow you to wall out your opponent with these attacks. Finally, there is one more thing to consider, and that is homing ranged attacks that can be hard to see and identify where it's coming from in the chaos of a ranked battle. These moves generally have a longer cast time, but being able to spam them at range with a shorter cooldown can be pretty oppressive to people who are not ready and are not focusing on you specifically, giving you a lot of opportunities to steal kills. With all that in mind, I think it's more important to figure out the loadout that you want to run first before deciding what EV spreads you want to go with your Pokemon. If you want to use a lot of strong, powerful spread moves that are active for a while and leaves you vulnerable, it's probably better to just forego speed altogether to get more bulk. Just like the Ice Beam example where the Ice Beam attack lasts for a while, or even something more common like Drill Run, Draco Meteor, or Waterfall. But on the other hand, if you have a Pokemon with a good gap closer and a lot of really fast rapid attacks and ways to get out really quickly like with U-turn or Volt Switch, I can see speed being pretty good here. You will be able to go in and harass more often thanks to your lower cooldowns and also get out in a timely manner. If you plan on doing something like this though, it might be good to slot in something like Protect to help you stay alive because of your overall lowered bulk. But again, this is just my opinion. What are your thoughts on all this? Let us know in the comments below. I hope this video helped you understand speed a lot better. It was pretty confusing to me at first trying to figure out if it's worthwhile to throw speed EVs into my Pokemon, but now I have a clearer picture on what I should be doing with my Pokemon, and I hope the same is true for you. For more fun and informative Legends ZA content, check out this video on screen right now. My name is Varsona, and I'll see you in the next video.